The Oklahoma City bombing was a domestic terrorist bomb attack on the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in downtown Oklahoma City on April 19, 1995. Carried out by Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, the bombing killed 168 people and injured more than 680 others. The blast destroyed or damaged 324 buildings within a 16-block radius, destroyed or burned 86 cars, and shattered glass in 258 nearby buildings, causing an estimated $652 million worth of damage. Extensive rescue efforts were undertaken by local, state, federal, and worldwide agencies in the wake of the bombing, and substantial donations were received from across the country. The Federal Emergency Management Agency activated 11 of its urban search and rescue task forces, consisting of 665 rescue workers who assisted in rescue and recovery operations. Within 90 minutes of the explosion, McVeigh was stopped by Oklahoma State Trooper Charlie Hanger for driving without a license plate and arrested for illegal weapons possession. Forensic evidence quickly linked McVeigh and Nichols to the attack. Nichols was arrested, and within days both were charged. Michael and Lori Fortier were later identified as accomplices. McVeigh, a U.S. militia movement sympathizer who was a Gulf War veteran, had detonated a Ryder rental truck full of explosives parked in front of the building. McVeigh's co-conspirator, Nichols, had assisted in the bomb preparation. Motivated by his hatred of the federal government and angered by its handling of the 1993 Waco siege and the Ruby Ridge incident in 1992, McVeigh timed his attack to coincide with the second anniversary of the deadly fire that ended the siege at Waco. The official investigation, known as OKBOMB, saw FBI agents conduct 28,000 interviews, amass 3.5 short tons of evidence, and collect nearly 1 billion pieces of information. The bombers were tried and convicted in 1997. McVeigh was executed by lethal injection on June 11, 2001, and Nichols was sentenced to life in prison in 2004. Michael and Lori Fortier testified against McVeigh and Nichols. Michael was sentenced to 12 years in prison for failing to warn the United States government, and Lori received immunity from prosecution in exchange for her testimony. As a result of the bombing, the U.S. Congress passed the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996, which tightened the standards for habeas corpus in the United States, as well as legislation designed to increase the protection around federal buildings to deter future terrorist attacks. On April 19, 2000, the Oklahoma City National Memorial was dedicated on the site of the Murrah Federal Building, commemorating the victims of the bombing. Annual remembrance services are held at the same time of day as the explosion occurred. Planning. Motivation. The chief conspirators, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, met in 1988 at Fort Benning during basic training for the U.S. Army. Michael Fortier, McVeigh's accomplice, was his Army roommate. The three shared interests in survivalism. They expressed anger at the federal government's handling of the 1992 Federal Bureau of Investigation standoff with Randy Weaver at Ruby Ridges, well as the Waco siege, a 1993 51-day standoff between the FBI and Branch Davidian members which began with a botched ATF attempt to execute a search warrant leading to a firefight and ended with the burning and shooting deaths of David Koresh and 75 others. In March 1993, McVeigh visited the Waco site during the standoff, and then again after its conclusion. McVeigh later decided to bomb a federal building as a response to the raid's target selection. McVeigh later claimed he had contemplated the assassinations of Attorney General Janet Reno, Lon Horiuchi, and others in preference to attacking a building. And after the bombing he said that he sometimes wished he had carried out a series of assassinations instead. He initially intended only to destroy a federal building, but he later decided that his message would be better received if many people were killed in the bombing. McVeigh's criterion for potential attack sites was that the target should house at least 2 of 3 federal law enforcement agencies: the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the Drug Enforcement Administration. He regarded the presence of additional law enforcement agencies, such as the Secret Service or the U.S. Marshals Service, as a bonus. McVeigh, a resident of Kingman, Arizona, considered targets in Missouri, Arizona, Texas, and Arkansas. McVeigh stated in his authorized biography that he wanted to minimize non-governmental casualties, so he ruled out a 40-story government building in Little Rock, Arkansas, because of the presence of a florist's shop on the ground floor. In December 1994, McVeigh and Fortier visited Oklahoma City to inspect McVeigh's target, the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. The Murrah Building had been previously targeted in October 1983 by white supremacist group The Covenant, The Sword, and the Arm of the Lord, including founder James Ellison and Richard Snell. The group had plotted to park a van or trailer in front of the federal building and blow it up with rockets detonated by a timer. After Snell's appeal for murdering 2 people in unrelated cases was denied, he was executed the same day as the Murrah bombing. The 9-story building, built in 1977, was named for a federal judge and housed 14 federal agencies including the DATF, Social Security Administration, and recruiting offices for the Army and Marine Corps. The Murrah building was chosen for its glass front, which was expected to shatter under the impact of the blast, and its adjacent large, open parking lot across the street, which might absorb and dissipate some of the force, and protect the occupants of nearby non-federal buildings. In addition, McVeigh believed that the open space around the building would provide better photo opportunities for propaganda purposes. The attack was planned to take place on April 19, 1995, to coincide with the anniversary of the Waco siege and the 220th anniversary of the battles of Lexington and Concord. Gathering materials, McVeigh and Nichols purchased or stole the materials they needed to manufacture the bomb, which they stored in rented sheds. In August 1994, McVeigh obtained 9 kinesticks from gun collector Roger E. Moore, and ignited the devices with Nichols outside Nichols' home in Harrington, Kansas. On September 30, 1994, Nichols bought 40 50-pound bags of ammonium nitrate from Mid-Kansas Coop in McPherson, Kansas. This would be enough to fertilize 4.25 acres of farmland at a rate of 160 pounds of nitrogen per acre, an amount commonly used for corn. Nichols bought an additional 50-pound bag on October 18, 1994. McVeigh approached Fortier and asked him to assist with the bombing project, but he refused. They robbed gun collector Roger E. Moore in his home of $60,000 worth of guns, gold, silver, and jewels, transporting the property in the victim's own van. McVeigh wrote a letter to Moore in which he claimed that the robbery had been committed by government agents. Items that were stolen from Moore were later found in Nichols' home and in a storage shed that he had rented. In October 1994, McVeigh showed Michael Fortier and his wife, Lori, a diagram he had drawn of the bomb he wanted to build. McVeigh planned to construct a bomb containing more than 5,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, mixed with about 1,200 pounds of liquid nitromethane and 350 pounds of Tovex, including the weight of the 1655 U.S. gallon drums in which the explosive mixture was to be packed. The bomb would have a combined weight of about 7,000 pounds. McVeigh had originally intended to use hydrazine rocket fuel, but it proved to be too expensive. In October 1994, posing as a motorcycle racer, McVeigh obtained 355 US gallon drums of nitromethane on the pretense that he and some fellow bikers needed the fuel for racing. McVeigh rented a storage space, in which he stockpiled 7 crates of 18-inch-long Tovix sausages, 80 spools of shock tube, and 500 electric blasting caps, which he and Nichols had stolen from a Martin Marietta aggregates quarry in Marion, Kansas. He decided not to steal any of the 40,000 pounds of ANFO he found at the scene, as he did not believe it to be powerful enough. McVeigh made a prototype bomb using a plastic Gatorade jug containing ammonium nitrate pills, liquid nitromethane, a piece of Tovix sausage, and a blasting cap. The prototype was detonated in the desert to avoid detection. Think about the people as if they were stormtroopers in Star Wars. They may be individually innocent, but they're guilty because they work for the evil empire. McVeigh, reflecting on the deaths of victims in the bombing later, speaking about the military mindset with which he went about the preparations, he said, "You learn how to handle killing in the military. I face the consequences, but you learn to accept it." He compared his actions to the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, rather than the attack on Pearl Harbor, reasoning it was necessary to prevent more lives from being lost. On April 14, 1995, McVeigh paid for a motel room at the Dreamland Motel in Junction City, Kansas. The following day he rented a 1993 Ford F700 truck from Ryder under the name Robert D. Kling, an alias he adopted because he knew an Army soldier named Kling with whom he shared physical characteristics, and because it reminded him of the Klingon warriors of Star Trek. On April 16, 1995, he drove to Oklahoma City with fellow conspirator Terry Nichols, where he parked a getaway car several blocks away from the Alfred P.Murrah Federal Building. The nearby Regency Towers Apartments lobby security camera recorded images of Nichols' pickup truck as it drove to the Federal Building. After removing the license plate from the car, he left a note covering the vehicle identification number plate that read, "Not abandoned. Please do not tow. Will move by April 23. Both men then returned to Kansas. They loaded their bomb supplies into a Ryder rental truck. The two then drove to Geary Lake State Park, where they nailed boards onto the floor of the truck to hold the 13 barrels in place and mixed the chemicals using plastic buckets and a bathroom scale. Each filled barrel weighed nearly 500 pounds. McVeigh added more explosives to the driver's side of the cargo bay, which he could ignite at close range with his Glock 21 pistol in case the primary fuses failed. During McVeigh's trial, Laurie Fortier stated that McVeigh claimed to have arranged the barrels in order to form a shaped charge. This was achieved by tamping the aluminum side panel of the truck with bags of ammonium nitrate fertilizer to direct the blast laterally towards the building. Specifically, McVeigh arranged the barrels in the shape of a backwards J. He later said that for pure destructive power, he would have put the barrels on the side of the cargo bay closest to the Murrah building. However, such an unevenly distributed 7,000-pound load might have broken an axle, flipped the truck over, or at least caused it to lean to one side, which could have drawn attention. All or most of the barrels of ANNM contained metal cylinders of acetylene intended to increase the fireball and the brisance of the explosion. McVeigh then added a dual-fuse ignition system accessible from the truck's front cab. He drilled 2 holes in the cab of the truck under the seat, while 2 holes were also drilled in the body of the truck. 1 green cannon fuse was run through each hole into the cab. These time-delayed fuses led from the cab of the truck, through plastic fish tank tubing conduit, to 2 sets of non-electric blasting caps, which would ignite around 350 pounds of high-grade explosives that McVeigh stole from a rock quarry. The tubing was painted yellow to blend in with the truck's livery, and ducts taped in place to the wall to make it harder to disable by yanking from the outside. The fuses were set up to initiate, through shock tubes, the 350 pounds of Tovix Blastrite gel sausages. which would in turn set off the configuration of barrels. Of the 13 filled barrels, 9 contained ammonium nitrate and nitromethane, and 4 contained a mixture of the fertilizer and about 4 U.S. gallons of diesel fuel. Additional materials and tools used for manufacturing the bomb were left in the truck to be destroyed in the blast. After finishing the truck bomb, the two men separated. Nichols returned home to Harrington and McVeigh with the truck to Junction City. Bombing. McVeigh's original plan had been to detonate the bomb at 11 a.m., but at dawn on April 19, 1995, he decided instead to destroy the building at 9 a.m. As he drove toward the Murrah Federal Building in the Ryder truck, McVeigh carried with him an envelope containing pages from the Turner Diaries, a fictional account of white supremacists who ignite a revolution by blowing up the FBI headquarters at 9:15 one morning using a truck bomb. McVeigh wore a printed T-shirt with the motto of the Commonwealth of Virginia, "Sic Semper Tyrannism, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants." He also carried an envelope of anti-government materials that included a bumper sticker with the Thomas Jefferson slogan, "When the government fears the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny." Underneath, McVeigh had written, "Maybe now there will be liberty," with a hand-copied quote by John Locke asserting that a man has a right to kill someone who takes away his liberty. McVeigh entered Oklahoma City at 8:50 a.m. At 8:57 a.m., the Regency Towers Apartments lobby security camera that had recorded Nichols' pickup truck 3 days earlier recorded the Ryder truck heading towards the Murrah Federal Building. At the same moment, McVeigh lit the 5-minute fuse. 3 minutes later, still a block away, he lit the 2-minute fuse. He parked the Ryder truck in a drop-off zone situated under the building's daycare center, exited and locked the truck, and as he headed to his getaway vehicle, dropped the keys to the truck a few blocks away. At 9:02 a.m., the Ryder truck, containing in excess of 4,800 pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, nitromethane, and diesel fuel mixture, detonated in front of the north side of the 9-story Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. Hundreds of people were killed or injured. 1/3 of the building was destroyed by the explosion, which created a 30-foot wide, 8-foot deep crater on NW 5th Street next to the building. The blast destroyed or damaged 324 buildings within a 16-block radius, and shattered glass in 258 nearby buildings. The broken glass alone accounted for 5% of the death total and 69% of the injuries outside the Murrah Federal Building. The blast destroyed or burned 86 cars around the site. The destruction of the buildings left several hundred people homeless and shut down a number of offices in downtown Oklahoma City. The explosion was estimated to have caused at least $652 million worth of damage. The effects of the blast were equivalent to over 5,000 pounds of TNT, and could be heard and felt up to 55 miles away. Seismometers at Science Museum, Oklahoma in Oklahoma City, 4.3 miles away, and in Norman, Oklahoma, 16.1 miles away, recorded the blast is measuring approximately 3.0 on the Richter scale.